Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series for microeconomic principles. And in this particular question, this video, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the potential test questions on Test 2. In particular, this table right here, this information. I'd like to ask a question about this mostly because it summarizes pretty much all the information you need to understand about the costs that we use in the course. So it's a convenient vehicle to have all this information in one place. So let's go through and calculate each of these particular items here. For our purposes, when we take a look at total variable cost, the only thing that we're talking about varying is labor. So we're talking about the short run for this firm. We're ignoring any other input costs. We're only using labor as an input. We're not using any raw materials, etc. So if we assume that wages are equal to $50, our variable costs are only going to be wage costs. So it's going to be a function of the wage rate multiplied by how many workers we have. So if I have no workers, obviously my wage costs are going to be equal to 0. If I hire one person, I'm paying them $50. If I hire two people, it's going to be $100. So it's 2 times 50. Three people, 3 times 50 is going to be $150. 4 times 50, 200, etc., etc., etc. And finally, when we have 6 workers, our variable costs are going to be equal to 300. So your variable cost is just L times your wage rate. All right, our average variable cost, it's going to be indeterminate here because our quantity is going to be equal to 0. And for this one, our variable cost, our average variable cost is just going to be variable cost divided by Q. So I could put the formula in here that we're going to have variable cost divided by Q. So 50 divided by 10 is going to be, he's going to give me 5 for my average variable cost. And I can redo that calculation, so I'd have 100 divided by 22. So that's 4.54. 150 divided by 36, 4.16. 200 divided by 52, 250 divided by 70, which is 3.57, and 300 divided by 86. So remember that your average variable cost is just your total variable cost column divided by Q. So it's this column here, this column divided by that column. So total variable cost divided by Q. For our purposes, for the course, I think as long as you go to 2 decimal places, I'll pick 2 decimal places here, that'll be perfectly fine. Average fixed cost is just going to be total fixed cost divided by Q. So we're going to have 100 divided by 0, which is not defined. So that contains no information. So this is going to be equal to fixed cost divided by quantity. So we have 100 divided by 10, which gives us 10. 100 divided by 22, which gives us 4.54. And if we go all the way down, and let me again change that to 2 decimal places. So average fixed cost here is going to be 100 divided by 10. Here it's 100 divided by 22. Here it is 100 divided by 36. So it's just your total fixed cost divided by Q. 100 divided by 52, 100 divided by 70, and 100 divided by 86. Average total cost is just going to be we add our average variable and our average fixed cost together. So here again, average fixed cost and average variable costs are indeterminate, so we could put that in that place. So average total cost is just average variable cost plus average fixed cost. So I can say that plus that. So here when we have a number of laborers equal to 1, output is equal to 10. We have 10 plus 5 plus 10 is equal to 15. Now I can copy that formula straight down. So this here is just average variable cost and average fixed cost added together. So we get 9.90. Do the same here for a quantity of 36. Average variable cost is equal to 4.17. Average fixed cost is equal to 2.78. Add those together, we get 6.94. And we do that across the following rows. So we need to take a look at here what is going to be our marginal cost. And for the first instance here, again, it's going to be undefined. So here is going to be marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in Q. All right. So remember, it's going to be how much how much our total cost change. We can look at our variable cost here. How much our variable cost is changing divided by the change in quantity. So here we are going to have our variable costs are going to be equal to 50, and that's going to increase by 10. So it's going to be 50 divided by 10, which is going to be equal to 5. All right. So all we're looking at here is how much our variable cost increased. So our variable cost increased by 50 units. So the numerator is equal to 50. And the denominator is equal to 10 because our output equaled 10. So it's 50 divided by 10, which is equal to 5. So if we do it for labor is equal to 2 and quantity is equal to 22, the change in variable cost is equal to 50, right? We increased by 50. So it's going to be 50 divided by what? We increased our output from 10 to 22. So it's going to be 50 divided by 22, which is equal to 50 divided by 22, which is equal to 2.27. So for this one, the numerator is going to be equal to 50. Why? Because total variable cost increased by 50, so this changed by 50, and that's going to be divided by 12 because it's 22 divided subtracting 10, which gives us 12. So the numerator is 100 subtracting 50, and the denominator is 22 subtracting 10, so we have 50 divided by 12. For 3, we see that what our variable cost increased by 50, went from 100 to 150. So our numerator again is equal to 50. The denominator is going to be equal to 36 minus 22, which is equal to 15. So we have 50 divided by 14. 50 divided by 14 equals, hold on, I think I made a mistake here. Let's take a look at this. 50 divided by 12 equals 4.16. My apologies. Not perfect. I do make some mistakes here. So make sure you realize that. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you realize I made that mistake. All right. So now we calculate the variable cost. Change in variable cost is equal to 50. We divide by 36 minus 22, which is equal to 14, which gives us 3.57. And we do the same for this row here. Our variable costs increased by 50. We divide that by how much Q increased. Q increased from 36 to 52, which is 16. So 50 divided by 16 is 3.13. Again, we do the same calculation again. We have total variable cost increased by 50. So our numerator is equal to 50, and our quantity increased from 52 to 70, which is 18, an increase of 18. So our marginal cost is equal to 2.77. And for the final row, Again, the change in variable cost is equal to 50. Notice because this is a short run and the only thing that we're changing is labor, variable cost is always going to be equal to the wage rate. So one shortcut that you could possibly do is that once you know that assuming wages are equal to 50 and we have no other inputs that we're varying, that the denominator for variable cost is always going to be equal to the wage rate, 50. So we have 50 divided by 86 minus 70, which is 16, and that gives us 3.13. So make sure you're comfortable with calculating all of these. Remember that when I do this, you will not be given this column, this or these columns here. All this information will not be given to you for the test problem. All these, let me actually do this, probably easier to do it this way. These pieces of information that I'm highlighting here will not be given to you. So you're going to be responsible for filling in the remainder of the information. So make sure you remember, number one, what is variable cost? It's L times your wage rate. Average variable cost is just your variable cost divided by Q. So you take your total variable cost and divide by Q for each of the labor levels that we're talking about. Your fixed cost, you just take total fixed cost and divide it by Q. Average total cost is just average variable and average fixed cost added together. And marginal cost is the change in variable cost divided by the change in Q.